I didn't really know about people's tribes. I just knew, okay, these guys speak this language, these guys have this religion, these people wear these traditional clothes. But it wasn't a differentiator for me at all. I just thought it was interesting.
The stories we carry don't end when they happen. They echo. They shape how we see the world and who we become. I'm Femi Akonde, and this is Echoes and Parables, where we make sense of the stories we live.
Yeah, Jos Nigeria. We grew up in Jos Nigeria, Femi and I. That's Plateau State in central Nigeria. Jos is the capital. It's really unique place, at least it was when we were growing up. Very interesting climate for West Africa. Quite cold, relatively cold. Quite high up, which is why it's called the Plateau, which meant that it attracted a lot of a very cosmopolitan community. It was quite unique that it had people from all over Nigeria, and then also a lot of international community corporates, but then also a very big missionary community. So it's quite a melting pot, even by Nigerian standards. And that's how we grew up. I tell people that I didn't really know about people's tribes. I just knew, okay, these guys speak this language, these guys have this religion, these people wear these traditional clothes. But it wasn't a differentiator for me at all. I just thought it was interesting and a rich environment in which to grow, which is how I think that I'm originally from the Niger Delta, which is, the second biggest oil producer in the country, which is one of the world's biggest oil producers, which is diverse within itself.
That's right.
Yeah, so my parents, for various reasons, decided to come to Jos and settle there, and that's where we went to school. To make it even more chaotic, it was an American school in a melting pot of a melting pot. And then, so just lots of influences and stuff going on.
Tell us about what the way I have come to be comfortable with understanding stories, and surprise, is coming at it from the perspective of an architect, in terms of that your story is literally a building that is structure that gets through the whole process of laying foundations, because you're trying to put on it something that is significant and substantial, something that is essentially your life's work and your worldview. What would you say from that perspective would be foundational ideas or principles that you grew up with? What would you remember as what parents or people around you set you up with?
Yeah. To keep it short, one is a love for God. That was number one. Grew up in church. Parents are both very strong Christians. So a love for God, an appreciation for things that you can't see, the spiritual world, the intangible, the metaphysical. The other one was hard work. Very strong work ethic in our home and around me, everywhere. It's just Nigerians, we work hard. We work hard. We don't. I tell people one of the differentiators between Nigerians, Kenyans as well, and is we don't wait around for the government to come. No one's coming. So we just get on with it. And then when you take that mentality outside, it means you very quickly rise to the top.
That's right.
Some people don't like it, but it is what it is. And so, and then the other thing was community. Very strong sense of community. As much as I was a daydreamer and, I had lots of different influences, I just always knew the people around and I was interested in them. So apart from the support and, I got interested very early in watching and listening to people. Even though I was a bit of I'd like to be alone a lot for, reasons, self-esteem issues and stuff. But I really got interested in people. I got interested also in change, like studying change. And that's what led to my career as a journalist, communications professional, and now an African media development consultant strategist. It was just that interest in the dynamics and the factors.
Interesting. Tell us that, again, just thinking, I'm grateful that you kept it very succinct in terms of just one or two foundational things. And obviously, community being a really big deal, there is, and you feel free to divulge as much or as little as you want to, but I think for at least people who are from the Just audience, there is the story of your dad, who at least I know had a significant impact on who you are today.
Yeah.
Do you want to just give us a brief foray into who he was and the work that characterizes life?
Yeah, no, I do. And also I give you permission to push me, Femi. I'm an overthinker. I try and think, oh God, is this coming across? No, please.
Yeah. No,
go for it.
Okay.
So yeah, no, my father, it's one of those things where they say it's in the blood. My father was a telecommunications engineer. So I do have a love for physics. A lot of people know me as a so-and-so creative type. I get attracted to things like physics and etc. And he loved that stuff. He loved the science and the math of things, but he was the perfect yin and yang. He also really loved photography and God and music, and that had a huge influence. If you look at me and my siblings, three of us are, one's a radio host. I'm in media strategy and training, and then one is a filmmaker and a photographer. One is still pretending that she's all about admin and stuff, but look at her social media feeds. She's a closet content creator. And I ended up marrying a visual designer, and so on and so forth. So that the fathers have a huge influence. We're vilified a lot in these days, but I've been told, even not just that quiet presence, but on top of that, as much as my dad didn't talk a lot and he wasn't around as much as I would have liked because of traveling and, just his personality, he needed to recharge his batteries a lot. Just watching him do his thing, leave a job at, PNT, Nitel now, and then go into photography, starting a business, trying to navigate all. Just watching him had a huge influence on me and what I do now. He had 4 children. I have 4 children. He, left employment for entrepreneurship. I did the same. He had his personal struggles. I have the same personal struggles.
That's really interesting, like the juxtaposition in terms of what he was versus where you see yourself now and some of the steps. Now, the perspective that I have of you is one that speaks a lot to the African male child experience in terms of the whole trajectory of growing up under the circumstances that was Nigeria at the time of the older generation. If you were going to pick one or two of what you found to be the most challenging thing, with the benefit of hindsight that you have in terms of what family life was like for you growing up?
Yeah, it's hard to separate the environment from the people. It's hard to separate my mom and dad, what they were going through, the things that made them laugh and the things that made them angry or cry, from what was going on in Nigeria at the time. One global theme was I'm Gen X. And one common factor with Gen X people around the world is that we kind of raised ourselves. We're the first generation where both parents went to work. So, in the morning, everybody would leave. Sometimes you get back early. So it's either the maid or or you grew up very quickly. You have to cook, clean, chores, you're handling all that stuff. Then when they come back, things should be in order. If they're not, there's hell to pay. And because of the situation in the country at the time, the military government, there was everything collapsed, the economy, everything. There was a lot of pressure on education because our parents and many other parents saw that as the only way out. It's very high expectations. And for someone like me, who didn't really do well at that kind of educational setup, that was a challenge. But the big one, I'd say, is the many influences, So I'm at that school, which is American. I'm at home, and we are from Delta. We're Delta Igbo. We have all these tradition and cultural things that we need to adhere to, how you greet. You're trying to manage that with people at school who say, hi, what's up? And then there's church and how you do things at church. Then there's, me and my friends. It was a lot to handle and process all at the same time. And, we in a very, my parents didn't show a lot of affection and love in the way we're told to expect it. So it was more of, I'm doing these things because I love you and I want to see you prosper. We can't necessarily afford this school, but we're doing everything to keep you there. We can't. So there's no I love you or hugs or stuff like that. It's, you hear from them when you're not doing the right thing. And that has its pros and cons. For my personality, it was very difficult because with a lot of the things I encountered, I'm in a school where we didn't have the money. They were really struggling to be there, but people who were there tended to be quite well off, at least the Nigerians, most of them. So there was that inferiority complex, there's self-esteem issues. I played sports, but I wasn't great at it. And, in high school, especially in American high school, sports is a big deal. Guys are good at sports. At the same time, it was a very academically heavy or intentional school. So if you weren't like top of the class as well.
Do you feel like you then had to lean on community around you, especially with hindsight now, where you can talk about the ways that the parents saw what was bringing up the family, which didn't have as much of the sentimental side to things? Do you sense that you were inadvertently reaching outside the home or looking elsewhere to reinforce your personality?
Yeah, definitely looking back now, I should have, you know what you know when you know it, you know what, and you only know what you don't know. So at the time, I didn't realize how valuable my friends could have been, or attaching myself to the right people could have been. I was desperately trying to be popular, desperately trying to belong somewhere, desperately trying to be accepted, looking for love. Just didn't really understand God on my own. It was very much about saying and doing the right things, which I didn't most of the time. So now I had the guilt and the shame on top of my head as well. So what I tended to do was fight, freeze, or flee. So I didn't know. It's only now I'm getting to know who I am. I didn't know who I was then, because I was afraid of being punished, or afraid of being bullied, or afraid of being mocked, or afraid of being misunderstood. When I'm with this group or that person, I try and figure out what they want to hear, and how they answer that, I am safe or accepted or liked, or or trying to do things or people please, and all that stuff. Afraid that if I say or do what I really think, 9 times out of 10, it'll get me in some kind of trouble, either physical pain or
emotional.
Exactly. So what I would do is escape into books, escape into music, escape into all sorts of stuff, hide things about myself from people, even people like you who genuinely just wanted to be my friend. Suspicion and paranoia very early, like what do people want? I don't like, when you don't like yourself, you're wondering what people are looking for. Because also you also learn that from home, you kind of, even though it's not what they intended, you learn very quickly that love and affection is a reward. It's transactional. It's not what they intended. But what would happen is, if you do your chores, if you get good grades, if you greet properly, if you read your Bible, and then we are happy and there's no trouble and we're pleased with you. If you don't, then the opposite occurs. And so that's quickly established in me. I need to do something. Yeah, which also very quickly disrupted my relationship with God, because in my head, I had nothing to offer. I was sinning all the time. So what's the use?
It's not. Sometimes the story isn't in what was said, but what was left unsaid.
Yeah.
My gosh, so much to unpack, as I knew this was going to happen. But let me, for the moment, and I might as well just state here that this is very unlikely to be the only time that you come on this show, because I know that there's just so much, but I want to kind of leapfrog now onto the phase of your life that has been at least one of the most defining as far as your development has been. It's when you then left Nigeria to pursue your education outside. Just in terms of just being able to pick up from what your whole ideas and your ideology growing up had been up to that point, and then just kind of plucking yourself out of that whole system and going away from the country to go and look for start looking out for yourself and pursuing an education. What was that like? Like, how would you say you were equipped or lacked the equipping? What were the salient points for you?
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you say that I was going to look out for myself. I realize now that wasn't the case at all. What I had decided to do was, in my head, I had found the answer to love, joy, and peace in life. And that was make as much money as possible, have a great house, buy this car, marry the girl, be respected and famous or popular, or just, all the social tips.
Yeah,
we talked about this before, where
absolutely.
For most men, just like with women, but for men, it's very specific as well, especially Nigerian men. I don't know too much about other cultures, but I know we grew up in that environment where, but if you're making it, you have a C-class, you built your own house, you married the hot girl everybody wants, you have, at that time, children, you're respected, given a title, all this kind of stuff. You tick all those boxes. And that's what I decided to do. If I do all these things, then I can prove, everybody who teased me or bullied me or, rejected me or beat me or whatever wrong, that I am. And so that's what I set up to do when I got to Kenya. I was gonna win at everything. This was a new chance, but yeah, what they don't tell you is wherever you go, you take yourself with you.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, no, you say stuff like that. You just allow it sit, because it's a significant statement, and one that's very, very reflective. You do take yourself everywhere you go. It's not the new environment. It's not the new school.
No. Yeah. Because when you've been using that framework instead of developing the way God intended us to do, that framework, by that I mean fight, flee, or freeze. When you flee, you go somewhere else. When you fight, it's people you're fighting. When you freeze, you're stuck in a certain space. But, it's not an original thought. It's something that's been shared with me by people who have gone further ahead down the road and have come back with lessons, or are there with lessons when you catch up to them. And they're like, you take yourself with you. Take yourself. Sooner or later, no matter how hard you try, and no matter how much money you have, or any of those things on the list I talked about, you will show up. Those things you're avoiding, that pain, that fear, that anger, all those unresolved emotional things that drag you down, that you think you can fix, that I think I can fix, which I can't as a human being, because a car can't fix itself. It just can't, it can't. If it's broken down, it's broken down.
Yeah, I want you to point down to specifics in terms of what experiences brought you to that point. Like, what are the steps that were taken. The trajectory you had over there was some schooling, then there was jumping onto a career.
Yeah.
Tell us how you navigated that and the experiences along the way that reinforced these ideas.
Yeah. No, so my sister and I got to Kenya, as I struggled with school because, the focus and the discipline and the consistency that it requires is not one of my strengths, so at some point I would get bored and my brain latches on to the most interesting thing, sometimes whether I want it to or not. It's sometimes completely out of my control. But what was great about the university I was in, USIU, is I had a lot of activities going on. And at that point, I was still thinking fairly straight. So I jumped onto the school yearbook, onto the school paper. I got involved in student government, in sports as well. So it was a very fertile environment for my mind, my busy mind. But academics suffered. Some other time we'll talk about my whole feelings about the education. It's the way it's set up in Africa. All around the world, I think we're playing ourselves. But anyway, no excuses. So I think it was my third year. Now, I met the girl, but it turned out she looked the part, but what actually attracted me to her is the kind of person she was. I think that was the first time I ever truly spent that amount of time with somebody who I've met several people along the way who are very grounded in themselves, so very comfortable in themselves. But this is the first time I really spent a long time trying to figure out, why is this person so centered? It's not because they're attractive. It's not because, everybody is, and it's not because they come from a good family. It's not because they're being chased by all this, constantly being reaffirmed that they're, liked and desired or whatever. They're just grounded, comfortable in their own skin. I think that was sort of the beginning of the disruption of my plan, but I pushed on with it anyway. So around that year, we started asking each other, look, what do you actually want to do as opposed to what we're doing? Because we came to this university to continue our education. It didn't really have the courses we wanted to do. So what do we do? This was me in panic, actually, because I knew I had to have something doing when I left. A lot of the people I was in school with were there because you get a degree after you finish high school. For me, I knew very well this had to lead to a job one way or another. Either back in Nigeria or here, I could not leave out of jobs. I'd be stuck again. Yeah, I didn't have connections. I even didn't know what I wanted to do. So I knew I had a very small window to figure it out. And she went along with me on that. So I got an internship. Interestingly enough, she's the one who came back from the holidays because she was living in another country, even though she's Kenyan. We came back with this tape and she's like, there's this show that I think you would really like to be part of. At that time, I knew I found media stuff, photography interesting because, teenage men fight with their fathers. At that time, I was like, I want to do my own thing. I want to get as far away from, that as possible. But I was drawn to it and I loved it. As I watched this thing, it was a show about the other side of Africa, not the war, not the disease, not the governments, nothing. It was about culture, it was about lifestyle, it was about entertainment, it was about innovation, it was about entrepreneurship. I loved it. And I wanted to be part of it. Something latched on, this is what I want to do. It's interestingly enough, it's produced in Nairobi by Reuters. And I'm like, okay, now, how's that ever going to work? It's no, get an internship with them. Work for free, learn everything you need to learn because you're not learning it here. And so we challenged each other to do the same thing. So I worked for free for a year with these guys. There's a whole Valiant way in which I got that internship, but I won't go into that. But yeah, I got the internship work for a year. And after that year, they offered me a job, posted me to Lagos for a year. That didn't really work out for me because it was just a year of seeing a lot of the ugly side of humanity. That's when I realized how protected we were, Femi, growing up in Jos. But that year, when Nigeria went to multi-party, and there were just all sorts of clashes and conflicts internally, religious, ethnic, it was a tough year. I did well because I finally found my thing, you know.
Yeah.
But it took its toll. I was quite lonely. And I realize now how sensitive and emotionally aware I am as a person. I didn't know that I just couldn't handle the pressure. And, you know, so I came back to Nairobi to see how I could set up my own thing. Because at that time, Nairobi was the hub of international media agencies, NGOs, everything. I thought if I set up my own thing, then I can control it. I can pick what things I want to do, etc. Now I know how it works. But I got back here and I was offered a job. And then at the same time, we're expecting our first child. So no brainer. Yeah. Once again, I had to grow up real quick. And so the thing I want to say there, Femi, is at no time did I address any of my issues. Yeah.
Could you even see them like at the time? Could you actually perceive them at that stage?
No, complete lack of self-awareness and also hyper focus on the list. You know, oh wait, now I have a child on the way. Now I have to provide and protect for, you know, my wife, and now I have to build and, you know, progress, and just not seeing myself, but seeing the image I've created in my head of what a successful, happy, loved Okwi would look like. And for that, I need to have these things. Yeah. And as long as I didn't have them, that's what I went after. Not realizing I'm ignoring the things that God has actually given me, the friends, the community, the wife, the child. And not even being aware that somehow things were working out.
Yeah.
Somehow things were working out, but I thought it was up to me. I thought it was if things went
That's
wrong.
Interesting. It's interesting that, just coming from the whole background that you had shared initially about some of those foundational ideas and some of the themes that you grew up around in terms of making your own way, essentially becoming your own local government in Nigeria, and then that whole attitude that you bring also to the workplace. You did excel quite significantly when it came to work. I know that there was a period where there was significant travel covering Africa, covering countries around the world. At that stage, were you still am I ticking boxes for that? Is there a time where it all came down to now coming back to focus on you? What pointed you back to yourself? Where did you start coming to terms with the stuff that was in the background that you had not paid attention to?
No, there was very little self-awareness at that time. Even, you know, I look back now and a lot of the travel I did was because something had gone wrong somewhere. So there was always a lot of pain and tragedy around the places I went to. You know, it's one of the things I ask God for now. Can I just go to nice places?
You have to. I have to push back. I have to just push back slightly on you because when you say pain and tragedy in the African context, give it some body, give it some specifics. Like
I remember, like when I landed so I wore two hats. On one side, I was doing this show, which was supposed to be about culture and everything else. But what actually paid my salary was I was supposed to do breaking news. And because it had a very Western lens, you know, not even just Western, that's just how the news cycle works. What we feed is if you hear something that'll affect your life, something has exploded, the stock market has crashed, you want to know so you can protect yourself. And that's what we feed into. And I think I was maybe a week in Lagos. I hadn't even unpacked my things when there were like these clashes in Mushi. which is a low income suburb. Well, at the time it was a low income suburb. Yeah. Now you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I wish yeah. So, and I remember it was like the first time I felt absolute terror. Absolute. It was something like something out of a horror movie. The guys that put black suit on them. They had machetes. They were burning and killing, and there's just smoke everywhere. We couldn't even tell which direction to go. You go the wrong way, the wrong accent, say the wrong word, have the wrong features, you're done for. And so it was me and my late colleague who was from Benue. We both spoke Hausa. So somehow we ended up between my very terrible Igbo and his Hausa. We somehow managed to navigate our way out. But while I felt that absolute terror, we were exclusive. Like our story went everywhere. So that was quickly erased by, I'm making it. I'm doing well. These guys are happy with me, which means what? Love, safety, all of that stuff. And I just chased it. And that's how it went. When I came back and they gave me a job here, I think my daughter was 3 months old when the opportunity came to go to Iraq. And the fear came back again. I remember my boss was also an amazing mentor at the time, just said, listen, think about who you are in this mix. You're African, Nigerian, Black, you're fairly new in this thing. You don't have a godfather anywhere. If you have an opportunity to go to the number one story in the world, that's going to define your career.
This was the period. This was the period of the Iraq War, just to context.
Just the second one,
the second one.
Yeah, towards the resistance has started, but the war itself had dissipated. So that's why he said, if you want to make a name for yourself and you want to progress in this structure, you have to do things. So I left my 3-month-old child and went because I needed to get there. I needed to do all those things. And you asked when it all started to change, and when I was forced to address those things. I'm not one of those people who sought enlightenment. If you'll allow me to digress a bit, Femi, I think that the reason we are here as human beings is it's a hospital and a spa. Somewhere, somehow, we got the idea that we can exist in God's universe without God. So this is where God is trying to repair us by repairing that relationship. But we're still sick. So I will still try and think I have the answers and the solutions to things that only a relationship with God can give me. Everything is opposite to that framework. If I give, I will receive. Yeah. No, I've got to get ahead. I've got to go through that, make my name, then I'll become a manager, then I'll get more salary, then I'll be posted outside the country, then,
Yeah.
So it's all opposite. Everything is opposite, Be of service to someone, even though they don't like you, So it's pain that usually brings about. Yeah. If you check most religious texts, whoever the prophet is, whoever the religious, that pain thing.
Yeah.
In fact, one of my mentors has told me to stop labeling things as good or bad. What's the lesson there? So I think I'm in pain, but actually pain is the resistance to the lesson. This should not be happening to me. Why am I going through this? And that was my whole mentality. So when your partner says, I don't want to be in a relationship with you anymore because of your drinking or your anger or all of which I'm doing to manage the pain in my own sense.
Yeah.
So, my children are afraid of me. I'm not meeting my deadlines anymore. I can't sleep. I'm anxious whenever the phone rings or, whenever an email pops up. I'm terrified whenever I'm going into a story. But then it's this cycle of terrified, and turns out I do well. Then, so all that stuff. So that's what brought me to my knees, all those things coming to bear.
Yeah.
And realizing what other people were seeing. That's what first brought me to my needs, just like God broke Jacob's hip.
Yeah. So I do want to capture at least a present point, I think, to your story. You are now significantly at a place where you are a mentor yourself. And this is in a space where you had significant struggle in terms of stuff that developed out of your work life, your marriage life, your fatherhood, and all that. Do you feel that you can just give us a bit of context to how that struggle has brought you to where you are right now?
Yeah. Like I said, I got to a place where at that time I labeled it as my life had fallen apart. All the things on that list that I checked up, I had lost because of my inability to handle life on life's terms, my ability to accept the life God had given me. Whatever blessings that came in, in marriage or in the job, or having children or being healthy, there was always the next step. It's not enough that you're healthy. You have to have abs. It's not enough that you're married. Oh no, you have to be like super romantic all the time. Sex every day. Like it's just without God, I'm just an addict. Like, and I'm an addict for all these things. I have to be feeling good about something all the time, which is ridiculous. That is not the life we're meant to live. There will be sorrow. There will be pain. There will be things that make me angry. I will make mistakes. And I need to accept that.
And sometimes it's only in looking back that the story begins to make sense.
I need to accept that because then I can realize how powerless I am over some of these things. So, like I said, the things that broke me was, having to get help for my alcohol use, was having to negotiate a space with my partner because they were just fed up and frustrated with my behavior, having to repair relationships with my children. And well, what I'm grateful for is the brokenness has actually started my journey to find out who I actually am and to speak and treat myself kindly. What you referred to before when you said you went to set yourself up. Now that's what I'm doing now. And even the realization I don't have to set anything up. God He's sorted it out. Like I said, I'm in the spa time now. This is a spa. I'm actually meant to enjoy sunlight, fresh air. I'm meant to exercise. I'm meant to see things. I'm meant to interact with people. I'm meant to do all those things. But technically, I do media training now. But what that has done is turn my life's work into purpose. I'm serving others. So as much as I'm paid to train, I've sometimes had issues with my clients because we need you to train these people out to tell this kind of story. I'm like, well, I first need to figure out who they are because from personal experience, if you're not okay up here, it comes out in the kind of stories you tell. Storytelling is spiritual. You may think you're just taking a photograph, but that's a human connection. You're trapping that moment. And God exists in the moment. The future is not mine. The past is not mine. The moment is where God is. That's where He expects us to be. Be with me now. Don't be anxious. Don't be afraid. Be with me now. So think about a photograph or recording something. You're capturing that moment. So anybody who's watching it is able to say, oh, that was what was happening. So something wonderful was happening. Oh, there was a lesson in that at that instant. Or I couldn't see myself in that way, but I can now. So if you, as a storyteller, let me tell you, if you believe in good and evil, the evil comes for the storytellers first. Just like dictators. Just like, you always go for the storytellers. That's how you own a community or you own a country or you own a race. go after their storytellers first. Their griots, their musicians, their authors, their poets, go after them first. Yeah. Have you ever noticed when in a dictatorship, all their writers and musicians are in exile? Yeah, they don't disturb other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you don't take care of this, if you don't take care of this and this, yeah, it will destroy you first.
It sounds like so your initial, it's almost like a full circle moment now where your whole interest in yourself as an African in that whole melting pot that you grew up in, that just was sort of a microcosm form, is now where you are couching, where you impart other storytellers. That's essentially where your work is at. What would you say in the context of Africa, through your eyes, the many experiences that you've had touring the internet and even outside of it, how would you summarize the sort of trajectory that we're on? And it's a really wide, big question, but it's a perspective from your point of view.
Yeah. Well, I'll use the media development space, at least what my partner and I are hoping to contribute to it, as a local, global strategy or perspective for how we think we can be of purpose and how we can serve. You know, in the media development space, there's a lot of workshops, there's a lot of courses, people are buying equipment left, right, and center, bringing people here, traveling them there to experience. I keep telling them, until a journalist, a communications person, a content creator, a storyteller of any kind can make a living of what they do, all this other stuff is superfluous. It does not. It's that roller coaster.
Yeah.
Also, for my fellow communications, media, whatever you call yourself, storyteller, that living needs to be, you need to come to terms with yourself. As long as you can pay your bills, save, invest, and you're safe in that you have medical insurance, you pay your taxes, that's it. Not everyone should be in a Rolls Royce. Not everyone needs to live in a penthouse, so that is what messed with my head, and I see it over and over again. So when I see things through that lens, that's the kind of story I'll tell. So I only tell stories about, if I'm a business reporter or whatever, or I content create about finances, I only want to get interviews with people like that, because to me, that's the measure of success. And that's how I'll get likes and all this stuff. And it's just, as one of my clients says, it's, the saying is that's tail wagging dog. It just leads us in wider circles of insanity, where a human being now thinks they're in control of things they have absolutely no control over and will drive you mad. I refer to the Bible a lot, but you'll find it in a lot of religious texts. Like Moses saw God for a second, a glimpse, and his hair turned white. He didn't even know how long he had been there. That's what it is when we try and mess with things like success means $1 million. Who says? So that now means if I am able, through my training and the storytelling projects I'm involved in, or the hopefully, if it's God's will, I get to lecture or influence policy at some level in the future, if I can get I was going to say, get my back to school, then I can be of service and help disrupt first the way we think, about success, the way we think about life. And that'll start bringing about the kinds of stories we should be telling as Africans, putting the microphone and the spotlight on the right people. Remember, I told you, my life's work has been the study of change. And in each country, in each local government, I said, in each town, in each neighborhood, there's someone who looks at what we label as bad or as a problem, or it's never been, somebody's figuring out a way. I told you that story of Mushi. I mean, when we got out of that neighborhood and we're thanking God we're still alive and, not able to breathe because of the smoke, the guys under a tree playing draft. Call them, come. What's the problem? We're like, can't you? They're fighting, they're killing each other there. Hey, that's when I realized, you know what?
Wow.
It's really perspective.
Yeah.
Everywhere there's someone figuring this thing out. Everywhere I've gone where I've said it's, there's always somebody making it work who's living there, figuring it out.
Yeah.
The stories need to be about those people because they don't see things the way I do. So
Yeah.
they're not depressed, they're not
Right.
drinking, they're not up all night, they're not, they have a connection to God and a framework for a unique measure of success that that they should be sharing with other people.
Yeah.
It's not a hammer for all nails, but we need other examples, other things, because somebody is always behind the story. Why? Why?
Somebody is always behind the story. I think, okay, I will take a pause on this our conversation because I know that just by virtue of our relationship, we'll have to constrain ourselves for the benefit of listeners. But I have to thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I said, and this will be evident as soon as this gets posted, is that there will definitely be a need to come back and piece together sections of your story that I know that is likely to be a parable for people to refer back to and to use in their own life's work and as they begin to understand their own peculiar stories. So thank you very much, Okwi Okoh.
Thanks,
My friend and brother. I appreciate
Thanks, brother.
Some stories stay with us, not because they ended, but because they never really did. This is Echoes and Parables.